Hello, Year 3. I'm Janet. I'm really sorry I can't be with you in school today, but here I am in my room at home. So I thought perhaps we could do a little bit of learning and thinking together. When I want to think about things, I put a hat on, and some people, especially my friend Jess, say that I'm silly because, well, this is my thinking hat. Oh, it's really nice because under here I feel like I'm all protected. Well, I am, aren't I? I've got this hat that's made out of strips of palm leaves that came from a very hot country called Vietnam. And it's like a lampshade, some people say. It's got a wooden frame underneath it to hold all the palm leaf strips together. I like it because when I'm underneath this hat, well, it's like I'm in my own little world. My friend Jess says I'm silly and that if I go out wearing this hat, everybody will laugh. I don't know what you think about that. You see, if you went to the country called Vietnam, people wouldn't think you were silly for wearing this hat because, well, everybody would be wearing them, especially the ladies who work out on their boats out on the River Mekong, selling their fruit and vegetables every day, and the sun beats down from the sky and it's very, very hot. So this is the perfect sunshade. Or if you're working out in the fields, sowing your rice seeds or picking your rice, and the sun is beating down on you, well, this hat is perfect because you don't feel poorly from the sun. So I like this hat though, for thinking in. I don't know whether you're a thinker. I can't stop thinking. My friend Jess says I'm silly for that as well. She says the trouble with you, Janet, is you just think too much. I'll take my hat off a minute and then I can talk to you some more. Maybe you can see me better without the hat on that was hiding my face a little bit. You see, I just can't stop thinking. I mean, why is glue so sticky? Have you ever thought of that? Well, my friend Jess, she says, well, that's easy, Janet. I mean, if you want to stick a picture in your book, well, you need it to be sticky. But why and how is glue so sticky? Who first made it? You see, there are so many things to think about, aren't there? And then the other thing I like to think about is nature. And somebody kindly made me this lovely little flower out of wool. They crocheted it. It's really pretty, isn't it? And it's soft and squidgy. And I like to sometimes just sit there and touch the flower and look at it very carefully. And I look at the delicate petals and the stalk, and then I think about all the flowers and the trees and the lovely leaves, everything that grows. And if I'm feeling a bit sad some days when, well, like in the winter when there aren't many flowers to look at, are there, out there, and it's very dark and the weather's not very nice and it makes you feel grumpy, well, I touch this little flower and it sets me thinking about all the happy times I had in the summer when I was out there looking at all the flowers. Sometimes things that we have can help us think, can't they? And I can't stop thinking about the world, can you? Planet Earth. And I got this ball. Can you see how it reflects the light all around it when you turn it? It's sort of sparkly, isn't it? And when I'm thinking about me, stuck in my own house a lot these days, well, I look at this and it reminds me of what a wonderful world we live in. And I can't stop thinking about it sometimes. The world and everything in it. And then I think about how it used to be. Oh, I love dinosaurs. Do you? This is my friend Dippy, the Diplodocus. Cool, he was a huge dinosaur, a plant eater with a very long neck. Well, I love thinking about the dinosaurs, do you? And when they roamed the earth millions of years ago, what that earth would have been like then. Do you know, I started thinking the other day about all the plants that grew, and well, I was thinking about it so much, I made this cushion look, and I used wool to make these patterns that show the beautiful sorts of flowers and leaves on trees that were growing when Dippy was about, the dinosaur. And I thought, what a wonderful thing it is that even millions of years ago there was a wonderful planet with all these beautiful things. Maybe Dippy ate some of these leaves, I don't know. And when I'm feeling sad again, I can cuddle my cushion. It's all squishy and keeps me warm. Or I can lay my head on it and have a sleep and think all those lovely thoughts. Thinking is amazing, isn't it? And when my friend Jess says, but you do too much thinking, Janet, I say, well, I can't help it because it's your brain, isn't it? Do you think a lot? It's exciting to think. And thinking helps you to learn so many great things. You can't help it, can you? It's your brain. The brain is a fantastic thing. And not only that, well, imagine this is me, or it could be you. I know, boys, you probably wouldn't want to look like this, but, well, you see, when I look at this little person and I think, well, it's a bit like me and thinking all the time about things, but when you think, well, it opens up something else, doesn't it? Now, this little lady's quite magic, look, because she opens up. And sometimes if I'm thinking about something special, I can write it down on a piece of paper and I can pop it in here and close it up. Or it just reminds me that, well, when I think deeply about things, sometimes I get a warm feeling in here. Maybe it's in my heart, I don't know. Some people say, don't they, that they get feelings very strongly in their heart. Well, inside me, all those thoughts can sometimes swish around and make me feel a lot better. Sometimes there can be sad thoughts, can't they, that make us feel sad inside. But you see, we're more than just a body, just like this little lady here. When we open her up, well, there's so much of our thoughts and our feelings whizzing around inside us as well. So I like that. It helps me think about all those things. And then there are some things I can't work out. Do you find that when you're thinking? I mean, the other day I found this leftover from Christmas, I expect, when we were all opening our presents. And, well, there's two spaces. And I thought, well, why is that empty now? Did there used to be something in there? Maybe you can guess, can you? Do you think? Have a think about it. What you think used to be in this? What do you think? Well, this one, it's a bit like a bottle shape. Can you see? A sort of fat bit and then a lid maybe on the top. Or is it? Could it have been a spaceship? Probably not. My friend Jess says, there you go, Janet. You're thinking silly things again. But you see, that's what happens when you think deeply, doesn't it? And what about this? I mean, I wonder what was in here. And then you look at it and you think, well, if it did have bottles in it, why do we need this? Why do we need to make so much plastic to put things in? I don't know. My thinking about things is pretty endless. And you know, when we're thinking about things, well, sometimes there are very right answers when we ask questions in our thoughts, aren't there? And sometimes wrong answers. Maybe the letters on this are the wrong way round because I'm using my camera on my computer. But maybe you're clever enough to work out those words, right and wrong, even if they are back to front. That's interesting, isn't it? Well, there are sometimes just right and wrong things, aren't there? I mean, like this silly picture, or is it silly? I don't know, that I found the other day. Look, what's wrong with that? What do you think? Is that a sensible bicycle? Let's have a look at it. I mean, it's got a comfy seat. It's got pedals so we can pedal away. It's got brakes to stop us if we're going too fast. But what's wrong with it? Are you saying the wheels? They are a bit silly, those wheels, but are they? I mean, how do we know those are not the right sort of wheels? I suppose you could talk about that later, couldn't you? And have a think more about it. I mean, could we ride that bicycle? We just know it's wrong, don't we? We just know that square wheels won't get us far. It would be really hard to go anywhere with square wheels. We just know it's not right. Oh, and then I found this, look. Is it right or is it wrong? What do you think? Goes back to my ball I was holding a moment ago, doesn't it? Like this. Planet Earth. How do we know, though, that planet Earth isn't square-shaped like this? Is that wrong? How do we know it's round like a sphere? I guess scientists have studied it. Once upon a time, though, many, many, many years ago, people thought the world wasn't round and it wasn't square. They believed it was flat. But then lots of scientists discovered that actually it's like a sphere. So we look at that, don't we? And do you agree? Is it wrong? But isn't it interesting to think about? What if planet Earth was square and not round? Would that make a difference? You see, I can't stop thinking again. Because there are other things that are right and wrong, aren't there? Not just like the bicycle wheels or the globe, planet Earth, when we know it's round, but there are other things that people do when we think about them. Are they right or wrong? Like this, look. Can you see this picture? Can you see a hand coming out of a car window? And what is that person throwing out of the window, look? An empty bottle. Perhaps a packet that had crisps in it. And look at that street. It's all tidy and neat, isn't it? I can't see any litter on that road, can you? But there's going to be now, isn't there, when that person throws that out of the car. Now, I was thinking about that. Is that a wrong thing to do or a right thing to do? It's right for the person in the car because they don't want the car to be messy, I suppose, do they? I was thinking about that and thinking, well, that's great. I don't want my car to be messy and untidy and smelly. I'm going to roll my window down and throw the things out of the window while I'm driving along. What a sensible thing to do. But is there something inside us that makes us think, believe, that that's not a right thing to do? I wonder what you think. You can talk more about this, I'm sure, but you see, the actions that we take, what we do, they're going to make a difference, aren't they? What if everybody threw the litter out of their car window? Think about that road then. Think about the animals that might come along. Oh, I'm sure you can talk about this more. So, are there right actions and wrong actions? And should we think about what we do? And then I saw this picture and it made me feel quite sad, actually. Well, there's two pictures here. Can you see? There's some children and a little boy. And then in the corner there's a little girl. Do they look happy? The actions that those children at the end on their own are making, covering their faces and their eyes, does that make them look happy? Or do you think they might be sad? What do you think? And look at the children behind them, look. They look like they're laughing at them. Is that a right thing to do or a wrong thing to do? I wonder why they're feeling sad. Maybe they're crying. Maybe they're embarrassed or feeling silly and upset. And those other children are laughing. I wonder if they've done something and they're just making fun of them. Maybe they've said something nasty to them. You could perhaps talk about that later. I wonder what has happened. They're not thinking right, are they? I mean, they're upsetting those other children by laughing at them. So what we do can really make a difference to how others feel, can't it? There can be right ways to treat people and wrong ways maybe. Such a lot to think about there. And then, oh, look at this. You know our wonderful seas and oceans and all the beautiful creatures in them? Well, look at these creatures here. Are they happy? I'm sorry the writing's the wrong way round, by the way. But can you see there's a little crab trapped inside a plastic cup that's been thrown into the sea? And there, look, there's a little penguin and he's all stuck in some netting that's been thrown into the sea. That's what happens, isn't it? If we throw plastic and materials into the sea that shouldn't be there, little creatures can get stuck and die. And it hurts them very much. So there's something else to think about, isn't there? Is that a wrong action of somebody who's thrown in that rubbish into the sea? And the consequences. What's going to happen to those little creatures? There's a lot to think about there. Of course, whether we do right or wrong things that might make creatures be in danger or upset other people, well, we've got a choice, haven't we, of how we behave. And there are people out there who perhaps might help us to make those decisions, to decide how we should behave. I mean, like this, look, there's lots of people in this picture. Police lady, mums, dads, other people who care for us, grandmas and granddads maybe, our friends, our teacher. Can you see the teacher, the last picture there? There are people out there who help us to think about what we're doing. I wonder if we've got a job to do as well with that. Maybe we can be helpers to our friends and people we meet, helping them to make the right or the wrong decisions, helping them to think. It's very important, isn't it, to think about things carefully. Well, people call these morals. Making a moral decision, that means making a good decision of how to behave or how to think about others. And lots of people all around the world, they don't just turn to all those helpers like mums and dads, grandmas and granddads, teachers and so on. They also think about what they believe in, their faith. I've got an interesting picture here, look. Can you see the shapes? Do they remind you of any special buildings? Special buildings where people might go to pray or to worship God. There's some temples there. There's some special symbols there. One of them you might recognise there represents people who are Muslims, who belong to Hinduism. There's a wheel there that represents people who are Buddhists. There's a star there that represents people who are Jewish. There's a cross and a big window and an archway. Does that remind you of a church? I wonder what the cross means. Perhaps you can remember that. People who have a cross as their symbol, can you remember who they follow? They follow Jesus, don't they? You see, for lots of people, they turn to really special people who they believe that God has sent along to help them to think again, to help them to think about making the right decisions. Well, you know, all this thinking, there's a special word for it, you know, when you think really, really deeply, when you think about thinking itself. It's called being a philosopher. Now, I thought that being a philosopher, it's a hard word, isn't it? Philosopher. I thought being a philosopher meant that you had to study for years and years and years and learn lots of complicated things. But you know what? I think I'm one, because I can't stop thinking about thinking. And you know what? You're one too, a philosopher. And maybe all these special people in our lives, well, they can help us too to be philosophers. And maybe all those special people that came along to teach people about God were also helping them to be philosophers. Oh, it gets more and more exciting and interesting, doesn't it? Thinking about thinking, being a philosopher. You know, people who are Christians, who follow Jesus and have that special symbol of the cross to remind them of that sad day when Jesus died on a cross, well, they've been left so many stories that were written down in that special book called the Bible. And Jesus, one of the things that Christians believe he wanted to do more than anything was to teach them how to think, to teach them how to think about what's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and to get them thinking about what God wants them to do. Now, even though Jesus lived over 2,000 years ago, those stories are still read in the Bible of all the things that Jesus said and did and the stories he told, to get them to be philosophers who think about what God wants them to do in their lives, and to think about how they should behave and whether there are right things or wrong things to do. I've got my friend over here, my little sheep. He hasn't got a name, so maybe after you've watched this film, you might want to name him. And it got me thinking when I found him in my little box about a story that Jesus told. He used to tell lots of stories to get people thinking, and they were called parable stories. That means it's a story that teaches you something and a story that makes you think. This little sheep, as you can see, is a little bit jiffly. He's always jumping about. I have to be careful, don't I, to put the lid on tightly when I store him in my box, because, well, he always wants to get out there and look around and find out things. I think that he's a thinking sheep. I suppose that's why we get on, because we both like thinking about thinking. Well, it reminded me of a story in the Bible, one of those parables that Jesus told to get people thinking. And it was about a farmer, a shepherd who had 100 sheep, and he loved them. Now, that's the point Jesus made in the story all the time. He loved them, and he wanted to do the right thing for his sheep. So he put them safely in a sheep pen, a lovely, safe fence all around them. And he counted them every day, and he knew he had 100, but one day there was one that was lost. And the thing about it is, Jesus said to everybody in this story when he was telling it one day, people used to come and listen to Jesus, didn't they? Gather round him, hundreds of people sometimes. And he said, you know, this little sheep, when he got lost, maybe he jumped over the fence. We don't know really how he got out, but he did. Maybe he just wanted to see what life was like on the other side of the sheep pen, because he was a thinking sheep. But he was lost. But the shepherd said, Jesus said that the shepherd, even though he had 99 other sheep, couldn't rest, because he knew the right thing to do, because he loved the sheep, was to go and look for him. So he did. Eventually he found him, all stuck in some bushes with spiky thorns, so he was trapped and he couldn't get out. And he carefully lifted him out and he brought him back to the sheep pen. And then Jesus said, well, The shepherd then felt so happy inside, because that sheep meant so much to him that he knew it was the good thing to have gone and found him. He could have just left him and forgotten him, but he didn't. But then Jesus said, think about this, everybody. He said, you know, God is like the shepherd, the farmer. And if you were one of the sheep, a person sheep, and you got lost, God wouldn't forget you, because he's always looking for his people. And if you're too busy thinking sometimes, too busy thinking, and you're rushing around and you forget all about him, Jesus said, God won't forget you. Now that message is really important for Christians. But you see, these people like Jesus have come along to help us to think about what's the right thing and the wrong thing to do. Sometimes Jesus used sort of funny phrases, things he said, go down there, little sheep, and be safe, to help people think. And one day he said, you know, the world, well, sometimes the world can be dark and lonely, can't it? When you're feeling sad and maybe you're thinking and thinking about everything. But then he said this, he said, I am the light of the world. Now that's a really important phrase for Christians. They often think about Jesus as the light. I'm going to do something to my globe now. Oh, see that? See how it's lit up? Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And he said, think about that, because whenever you're in the darkness and you're feeling sad, you're not really, because I'm always there with you. And Christians believe that Jesus is in heaven with God, and that he'll always hear their prayers and be their friend. And then he said, you must be a light too. He said, think about this. You must be a light in the world as well. Don't hide all your light underneath things and hide away. You must tell everybody about me, and you must care for everybody. Think about it. You see, this teacher Jesus for Christians is still so important, and they follow all these things that he said, things that Jesus said to get people thinking. That's all he wanted to do. I'll put that off again now. Of course, there have been lots and lots of special teachers. So many of the world's faiths have special people who've come along to help people to think about how to live their lives and about how they can be better parts of planet Earth and look after planet Earth and all its people even more. One of the best ways, you know, to be a philosopher, to think about thinking, is to sometimes just to sit very, very still. You might want to just put a light on. Christians often light candles, but don't you light candles on your own, will you? If you're with a grown-up, that's fine. Or maybe just a little battery candle or light. Often people just sit very still and they look at the light, and they say that that helps them to think. And when they think, they feel things very strongly inside, and that can help them too. Help them to make right and wrong decisions about how they should behave. Help them to think more clearly. So being a philosopher doesn't always mean rushing around thinking and finding about new things. Sometimes it means just being still. Perhaps when you've finished watching this film, you could try that. Try sitting really, really still, just taking deep breaths, slowly in and slowly out, and just think while you're sitting very, very still. Some people say thinking really helps them feel better. Of course, if you're a Christian or a member of another faith, well, they also do that deep thinking and call it prayer. when they're talking to God and listening for what God might be saying to them. That's another special kind of prayer thinking. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today, and I hope you haven't been too bored, and I hope, like my friend Jess says, you didn't think it was silly, me just thinking about thinking and thinking all the time. I've got my thinking hat here again, and I'm putting it on because it is nice under here, and I hope maybe that you will enjoy doing even more thinking about thinking. Thank you for being a philosopher with me today, because there's so much thinking to do. Bye.